Hey, this week I'm going to show you how I turned Mikey into the Hunchback, and not Igor the Hunchback from Frankenstein, but the actual Hunchback of Notre Dame. So I'm using a 2014 Mikey from the Michael Bay movies because he already looks like a hunchback, and his gait, he's got one leg that kind of looks like it's dragging behind when you stand him up straight. So I dipped him in, soaked him in some hot, recently boiled water, and then he's easier to take apart. And now I'm scoring and using my sanding bit on my Dremel to sand out a bunch of his the front of his shoe, because his toes are going to be sticking out. And I'm not doing Quasimodo, I'm doing Quasimodo. I think that's how they said it in the original movie, Quasimodo. Anyway, I'm filling in all the spots that were left by taking off his gear with some spackling, and then I can just easily sand that 15 to 20 minutes later. That's what I'm going for. I move on to some green stuff. I mix that together. It takes a while, but I didn't show it. I made 2 eyeballs, and I put the 2 big bulging eyeballs. One's a little bigger than the other one. Then I do the eyelids just by wrapping a thin strip of it around, and one eyelid is going to be covering the eye more of the smaller eye, and then one is a big bulging eye. And then I do another strip that's going to be the start of the brow line, and then down, and I let that dry for a little bit so it's easier to work with without squishing it when I'm doing more. And I do the toes, which are just 4 little balls, and I made them bigger on one foot, and then 2 they're coming out, and then the other one the whole thing is. Anyway, I added his lips and a little bit more to his head. Now after that dries, it takes like 24 hours about, and I fill in with spackling all the little gaps and cracks, and where the green stuff met the green stuff that was his head already. Then painted Hunter green after it's sanded. Then I added more spackling and sanded it and painted it green again. Or no, that's what's happening now. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, but it's hard to keep up. Sometimes it goes so fast. And also I have other stuff I want to talk about, how like the Hunchback is not a universal monster. I guess that's why NECA did the Hunchback Igor from Frankenstein, but that's just made a quick template for the shirt that he's gonna have on, and that's the material I'm gonna use. It came from like a window sconce. That's a cool material that's gonna be good for this, I think. But yeah, the Hunchback is not a monster. He's actually the hero, and the rich people are the monster in that movie, and also the outdated political systems. Anyway, I have Milliput for the first time, and I've wanted it for a while. It's softer than the green stuff, so to do a big section like this makes it a lot easier. And then I went to wash my hands after I mixed it together to make it easier to work, because it makes your hands really sticky. The green stuff too. And I tried a couple tools. It stuck to the silicone tool. The metal tool was alright, but it's too sharp an edge, so I used just a piece of a toothpick to make all the indents, and then gave them a little more definition with the metal tool. Now I cover everything with the matte acrylic varnish, but not the shell, because that's still drying. It takes like 4 to 5 hours. But I want my fingerprints to get on that, because it was making cool ridges that I'll try and bring out the details after. And I have a white acrylic primer that I mixed with some gray to make a gray primer that I'm covering everything except the pants, because the pants are the one thing I'm going to keep, because I like how it's half black and half orange. Like he had 2 pairs of pants that were tattered and he sewed them together. I think he would do that because he's got all raggedy clothes. Then I go with after I painted his eyes, I use a hunter green to paint a coat on his skin and his shell and his face, because that's part of his skin. And it's just a base coat, but yeah, the Hunchback, it was a really sad movie, because I watched it like when I was like halfway through this, and then I realized he's not a universal monster. He's just a sad, down on his luck hero. He's deaf and he's got the deformities, and I'm pretty sure he's autistic. So unfortunately he got a bum rap, and now I'm painting just a regular white acrylic in the eyes. And Wild Wasabi is like a really light pale green that I thought would be good because you know, he doesn't get out a lot, and when he does, he's usually ostracized. But okay, now I'm dry brushing. I pretty much dry brushed the wasabi green, but a lot more on his skin, and then a little bit on the shell, and obviously on his face, but just a little bit on the brush and spreading it around. But I want it to be a lot on his skin, but still some of the darker green showing through. Now I'm doing like a heavy dry brush of the raw sienna because I want to cover his whole chest, but I still want some of the dark burnt umber to show through. And then a little less heavy on the shell, but that's going to be kind of the main color of the shell. But where I dry brushed with the wasabi, now the raw sienna is brighter in those spots because it went over the lighter color. But to bring out even more details, I have a daffodil yellow that I'm doing a light dry brush over all of his shell front and back. And I made it so the shell connects all the way around instead of having like his chest and then skin and then shell on his back. But I made a big hump, which NECA's doesn't have a big hump, he just has a big shell. There it is. So I think I made a better Hunchback. I mean, their toy is great, but it's not the real Hunchback. The real Hunchback isn't a monster, he's just a tragic hero, and he gets it's a really sad movie. I wanted to make a monster, I ended up making like a self-portrait. That's the Disney Quasimodo, not Quasimodo. And giving him green eyes. I went with a Christmas green for his irises. And then he had a necklace on already, so I paint that gold. It was silver when he was Michael Bay turtle earlier, but he's about 5-inch scale. And I'm doing cinnamon brown on his shoes where I did everything else with the burnt umber. But now I'm doing a satin real brown, so it's a darker brown, it's a real brown. But it being satin, it's like a semi-gloss, and that's really going to make those spots stand out as opposed to everything else that I painted. I just do the straps and the sole of his shoe with that satin real brown. Now all the places where he has wraps, I'm doing a dry brush of a parchment white just to make it look like the wraps were once white, but after years of wearing them and probably only washing them once every 2 years, they're dirty white. They're more dirt than white. Now I cover everything with a matte acrylic varnish, and I'm getting the shirt ready to go on him. When it's on him, I can see I want to cut it more, and then it was just open on one side. I glue those together and then cut more off because I really want the shell to be popping out because I'm covering a lot of the work that I did. And I used twine for his belt, and now I'm using a Sharpie fine liner to just do pupils. And the head looked like it was missing something, so I decided to use some more of that Milliput and give him 3 teeth. And I thought that came out pretty good. And then I had a little bit Milliput left. You might not know Quasimodo was the king of the fools. I had a little bit of yellow to his teeth, and even though they're not dry yet and I put them together, but he was the king of the fools in that movie. I made a crown out of foam and then that scepter, and I'm the reigning king of the fools for the last like 12 or 13 years. It goes back to my career as a rap artist. Anyway, so that's how I made Quasimodo, and I've got another Universal monster. He's a real monster coming next week, and so until then, remember, always keep your head up. Peace.